Hi there, my name is Joy Morin. I am a piano teacher and a blogger at colorinmypiano.com. I thought I would hop onto a video today to talk about a quote that I shared on my blog recently. That quote is, "To achieve great things, two things are needed: a plan and not quite enough time." So this quote got some pretty good reactions from some of you, my blog followers. I think it's something we can all relate to, and it's something that's kind of humorous. I bet if you're anything like me, you've found that sometimes you can find yourself being very impressively productive sometimes when it comes down to crunch time. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how this quote can be applied to piano teaching. So there's two parts we can talk about: the plan and then the not quite enough time part. Okay, so let's talk about the plan first. So I'm thinking of situations with students where we have some sort of deadline that we're working towards. So it might be your studio recital that's coming up or some other type of performance. So part of creating a plan that's going to be successful and lead to success involves choosing a piece of music that is very doable for the student. I think it's important for us as teachers to kind of take that responsibility to make sure that we're guiding the student towards choosing a piece that we feel reasonably confident that they will be able to play quite well. So I think that's one important part of the plan. The other part of the plan is to help the student think about how they can kind of pace themselves as they're working on the project in order to avoid sort of procrastination and then having to really crunch everything into the last few weeks leading up to the deadline. So, some students do this pretty naturally, and we're able to just section by section work through the piece, and the progress kind of is steady throughout the time period. And I find that there's other students where I need to kind of call their attention to what's going on. If I see that there's not a lot of progress happening in the first few weeks, and I know that that's important, that we get some good work done early on in the process, then I bring it to their attention. And I like to kind of pose the question to them, what do you think we need to do here so that we can make sure that we have this piece learned by our deadline? And just asking that question kind of puts them in the right mindset that we want them to. We want to help teach them how to plan well and work well towards a deadline. The adult world is very much deadline driven. We're used to working towards deadlines, and maybe some of our students are too if they're used to working for their homework deadlines. But maybe they haven't really thought about how to do it well for piano. So it's something worth talking openly about with the student when it's needed. Okay, so now let's talk about the not quite enough time part. Okay, so when it comes to this, I think there's kind of 2 points I want to make here. First of all, I think it's important that we're always aware of that deadline and where it's at. So we're not just kind of thinking, oh, that recital is just, somewhere in the future, I'll be ready in time, But instead, we're very aware of where that deadline is and when it's coming. So one tool that I like to use to help my students with this is to have a little sign up in my studio that lets them know. It's a countdown that lets them know how close the recital is or whatever the event might be. So I created this with something I printed out. I designed this on the computer and printed it out, and this is just a simple frame that came from the dollar store. And then using a dry erase marker, I've written on here what the event is that we're working towards and how many days are left. So each day I just erase this and put the number, decrease it by a day. So I think this is good for students to see. When they come into the studio, they see it sitting there, or maybe it's sitting on your piano, and they always comment on it, they remark on it. So it's nice to just kind of have it there, speaking for itself, rather than, me needing to make sure I'm mentioning it every single time with the students. It's nice to just kind of have this neutral voice in the room. So helping students stay aware of what the deadline is so that they're thinking about this coming. I also like to pull up the calendar app on my phone sometimes and show it to students and show them what it looks like in terms of the weeks. Okay, so this is part of the having not quite enough time. They can rather, the number of days might seem like a large number sometimes, but if we say, oh, look how many weeks are left, oh wow, this means there are 4 lessons left before our studio recital will be here. That's only 4 more times that we get to work together on this piece to make sure it's polished and beautiful and sounding the way we want it to. And that makes it seem closer. So there's sort of like this psychology. You can kind of trick yourself into feeling like the deadline is closer than it really is. So that's part of the kind of leveraging the not quite enough time. And then finally, another thing I like to do is to basically kind of move that deadline earlier for students. So I like to inform them early on that ideally I feel students should have their piece well learned and quite possibly even memorized at least 3 or 4 weeks ahead of the recital date. And what that does is just allow us to, comfortably move into the recital time without a lot of fuss or last minute scrambling or anything like that or stress. The piece is just well prepared, and we can just focus on the polishing details and just making it very expressive and beautiful. So I try to paint this picture for the student, like, think about how we could do this. Wouldn't this be a nice way for us to work through this time and comfortably meet the deadline and give a great performance at the recital? So by letting them know that I like to see students have their piece prepared well 3 or 4 weeks before the recital, that again kind of makes it feel like, wow, there's not much time left. I need to get going on this. So those are just a few thoughts relating to this quote and how it applies to piano teaching. If you have other ideas, other tips or tricks that you use that help your students meet their deadlines well, I would love to hear those. So please do share those below, and we can talk more about this quote. Thanks so much.